Krishna, please accept my humble obeisances. All praise to Srila Prabhupada. Welcome to our ISKCON April Srimad Bhagavatam class. We'll discuss 1.11.34 today. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Gnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunadanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamame Hari Priye Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyeva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayamudirayet. Shushusha shraddadhanasya vasudeva kadharuchi Syanmahat sevaya vipra punyatirtha nishevanat Shinvatam sukadha Krishna punyashravana kirtana Hridayantasto bhadrani vidunoti suhritsatam Nashtaprayeshu bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya Bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Hare Krishna. We are reading Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, chapter 11, text 34. Evam nripanam kshitibharajanmanam akshauhinibhi parivritta tejasam vidhaya vairam shvashano yatha mitho vadheno parato nirayudha evam nripanam kshitibharajanmanam akshauhinibhi parivritta tejasam Vidhaya vairam shvasano yatha mitho vadheno parato nirayudha. Word to word meanings. Evam, thus, Nripanam, of the kings or administrators, Kshitibhara, the burden of the earth, Janmanam, born in that way, Akshauhinibhi, empowered by a military strength of horses, elephants, chariots, and infantry. Parivritta, being puffed up by such surroundings. Tejasam, prowess. Vidhaya, having created. Vairam, hostility. Shvasana, interaction of the wind and the pipe plants. Yatha, as it is. Analam, fire. Mitha, with one another. Vadhena, by killing them. Uparata, relieved. Nirayudha, by himself without being a party to such fighting. Lingraj Prabhu, you're able to see the screen, right?
Yes, Mataji.
Yeah, thank you. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The Lord was pacified after killing those kings who were burdensome to the earth. They were puffed up with their military strength, their horses, elephants, chariots, infantry, etc. He himself was not a party in the fight. He simply created hostility between the powerful administrators, and they fought amongst themselves. He was like the wind which causes friction between bamboos and so sparks a fire. Purport. As stated above, the living beings are not factual enjoyers of things which are manifested as God's creation. The Lord is the genuine proprietor and enjoyer of everything manifested in His creation. Unfortunately, influenced by the deluding energy, the living being becomes a false enjoyer under the dictation of the modes of nature. Puffed up by such a false sense of becoming God, the deluded living being increases his material strength by so many activities and thus becomes the burden of the earth. So much so that the earth becomes completely uninhabitable by the sane. This state of affairs is called dharmasya glani, or misuse of the energy of the human being. When such misuse of human energy is prominent, the saner living beings become perturbed by the awkward situation created by the vicious administrators, who are simply burdens of the earth. And the Lord appears by his internal potency just to save the saner section of humanity and to alleviate the burden due to the earthly administrators in different parts of the world. He does not favor either of the unwanted administrators, but by his potential power, he creates hostility between such unwanted administrators, as the air creates fire in the forest by the friction of the bamboos. The fire in the forest takes place automatically by the force of the air, and similarly, the hostility between different groups of politicians takes place by the unseen design of the Lord. The unwanted administrators, puffed up by false power and military strength, thus become engaged in fighting amongst themselves over ideological conflicts and so exhaust themselves of all powers. The history of the world reflects this factual will of the Lord, and it will continue to be enacted until the living beings are attached to the service of the Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita 7:14, this fact is very vividly described. It is said, the deluding energy is my potency, and thus it's not possible for the dependent living beings to supersede the strength of the material modes. But those who take shelter in me, the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna, can cross over the gigantic ocean of material energy. This means that no one can establish peace and prosperity in the world by fruitive activities or by speculative philosophy or ideology. The only way is to surrender unto the Supreme Lord and thus become free from the illusion of the deluding energy. We will probably discuss this paragraph a little bit and then move on to the further section. This is one of Prabhupada's favorite topics, just how people who are so materialistic, how they're forgetting the formula for real peace. And how much ever we try, we are not going to get that peace. So it's really very interesting. As I was reading this purport, was feeling so much of connection and symphony with Bhagavad Gita, probably just because I have completed Bhakti Shastri exam for the first module, Bhagavad Gita chapters 1 to 6. And this is like, just a nice thread where all those nice and beautiful Bhagavad Gita verses are coming together in this purport. So I'm appreciating the symphony or the harmony in the scriptures. So beautiful how Prabhupada is bringing it out. And other thing that I was actually thinking about this verse kindly forgive me, I'm not able to join the morning classes for some time, missing all of your association and association of Srimad Bhagavatam. But as I was just going through the previous verses, it's actually talked about Krishna is entering Dwaraka, and he's just entering these palaces and the description of the queens. I'm like, wait a minute, why is this verse coming in the middle? I mean, why Shukadeva Goswami has to, I'm sorry, it's not even Shukadeva Goswami, it's Sutta Goswami. Why is he speaking this in the middle, like as the interactions of Krishna and the queens, the glorification of his, that transcendental rasa of conjugal love, why this is coming in between? I couldn't find any reference, but one thing I was understanding is this is emphasizing one of the main reasons for the Lord's appearance. We hear this verse from Bhagavad Gita, Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam. So that is one of the main, three main reasons for him to appear. And then the other thing is, whenever this dharmasya glani, whenever this irreligion is prominent, that's when Lord appears to re-establish the laws, principles of religion. So this verse is actually bringing into that concept. It's not, this is just my understanding. Kindly forgive me if it's a speculation. As I mentioned, I didn't find any reference, but it's bringing the Lord's appearance and Lord's transcendental nature as a whole. It's not just, he is only one rasa or the other rasa. He is in the company of the queens, and he's been glorified, how that relationship and how he is so much, in that relationship with the queens. But at the same time, he is actually taking care of his other purposes of appearance also. This Kshitibhara Janmanam, this Kshitibhara is the burden of the earth. And this is interesting. We just came across this verse in our daily Srimad Bhagavatam reading in chapter 3 of 3rd canto. I believe it's text 14. Prabhupada is elaborating on this, how the earth is burdened. It's not by the overpopulation. Sometimes we hear that, oh, the population is increasing and it's going to cause trouble, this, that, all that stuff. But Prabhupada explains there are so many of these oceans and mountains and so many living entities, much more than what we have the human population is actually living there. And it's so nice the way Prabhupada writes this purport. He says, if we take the senses, we'll actually find there are so many more creatures and much more heavier than the human beings. So definitely, if it is only the population that will actually burden the earth, it has to be burdened so much more than we can imagine with the overpopulation of the human beings. But what actually burdens the Mother Earth is this dharmasya glani. When people become irreligious, and this beautiful discussion in Bhagavad Gita, the last section where Arjuna talks about this destruction of family traditions and how it leads to this unwanted population. Varna Sankara. And then he describes how those people actually cause a hellish life for the people living there, as well as people who have died. They'll have to, even the forefathers, everybody has to go through this immense suffering, and all the community welfare projects and everything will be stopped because they don't have any proper goal. They don't have the understanding of that higher authority. So as long as we have that kind of people and misguided civilization, we will have to go through this suffering. So that is about the burden of the earth. And when such thing happens, we know that this Shweta Dweep, on the shore of that, Lord Brahma goes on behalf of Mother Earth, and all the demigods pray to Lord Vishnu to please come and relieve Earth, Mother Earth, of this burden. So Krishna promises he will come, and that's how his appearance is. So that is what is being talked about here, how he is actually pacified after killing those kings. So it's like, taking a major project, and after that we are like kind of, relaxed. So the Lord is in that mood. Okay, he came for that purpose to relieve the Mother Earth, and it has been accomplished. So he is pacified. He's like relaxed mood. And the other aspect is this peace formula. Prabhupada says the living beings are not factual enjoyers of things which are manifested as God's creation. So, as long as we are in this false enjoyer, thinking that this belongs to me and this belongs to them, so I'll have to get that, that is actually this constant friction going on. We can understand, I mean, we don't need so much to have fights between one another, because we are forgetting who is the real proprietor. When we don't have that understanding of who is the proprietor, then obviously I want to enjoy. I mean, why the other person has to enjoy? I want to get that. I want to enjoy. When we have that kind of mentality, it's just takes, it doesn't really take anything to have that kind of hostility or the fighting spirit, where we constantly go through this. I mean, Prabhupada is talking about the kings here, but he is comparing the current day politicians and all these people who are working for so-called philanthropy, welfare work, and all this stuff, but who are actually forgetting the real purpose behind that. They are trying to establish the peace, but without understanding this, who is the proprietor, who is the enjoyer, it's not possible for us to become peaceful. And this is actually a powerful statement, puffed up by such a false sense of becoming God. I mean, not only people out there, even as devotees, we can actually say, oh, I'm just trying to enjoy things. I'm not really trying to become God. I mean, I understand Krishna is God, but the propensity when we have that kind of becoming the proprietor, and I want to enjoy this, I want to own this, I want to possess that, that is really the sense of becoming God. And we are not understanding Krishna's position. I mean, though we understand theoretically, but the propensity is there in us to lord it over the material nature, as Prabhupada puts it. And then the other point is, Krishna is instigating. He's not actually the party. He himself was not a party in the fight. He simply created hostility between the powerful administrators, and they fought amongst themselves. This is actually very interesting. So Krishna, it's happening by his will. And he is just the chariot driver. He's not really fighting there. But it so happened like the hostility, the Kauravas mentality. So this whole thing has been instigated. And one thing I was hearing this class, and my spiritual master, he was mentioning how this whole Kurukshetra battle actually started. This when they have this Sudharma assembly or Maya Sabha of Pandavas. Duryodhana goes there, and when he thinks it's actually a floor, and he falls into a pool, Draupadi and all the queens of Dwaraka, they were actually laughing. And then Yudhishthira scolds them, please don't laugh. But Krishna says, no, 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 laugh, laugh. He's actually encouraging them. So that is what incited Duryodhana really to get back at Pandavas. He was like, of course, he's obviously carrying that from his childhood, that enmity towards the Pandavas, but that really instigated, like, I really want to see their end. Like, how come they, insult me like this? How come Draupadi can laugh at me like this? So that really, I mean, Krishna encouraging that. The moralistic philosophy, you may say, oh, how can the all loving and all religious or all good Lord can actually do that? How can he encourage that kind of a mentality? And the same thing we can see Arjuna, the whole Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna says, I don't want to fight, I don't want to fight. And I'm sure if Arjuna would have quit, the whole battle would have stopped. But Krishna, again and again, I mean, every time Arjuna brings that question, Krishna brings Arjuna back from different platforms, why he has to fight. So Krishna is actually encouraging this in one way. So we may question, hey, wait a minute, why is Krishna is actually encouraging this kind of a mentality and this kind of a, so-called violence? But it's actually for the ultimate purpose of re-establishing the dharma. So that is what he is doing it for. And the other aspect of this platform of peace is, in the 5th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, it's explained a person who knows what all this belongs to and who is supposed to be the enjoyer, along with Krishna is all loving and all good. So when we understand that, even when we see little bit differences here and there, apparent reversals once in a while in our life as it keeps coming, we still understand Krishna is all loving and this is happening under Krishna's energy. So when we have that kind of a faith, we won't go through that anxiety or restlessness. We can actually become peaceful. So that is the thing actually which is missing from all these administrators, because we are all, the administrators are in our own sphere, our own life, in our little circle. We are all trying for that, that controlling the thing. And I want to do this, I want to possess this. That's what is really causing this disturbance in the society, which is actually the cause for all the so-called destruction, war, pestilence, and everything. And Prabhupada is bringing how one is able to overcome this. So that's really part of the material energy, and under the false ego, that's like kind of inevitable, we're all going through. But the way to cross over that mentality or this whole material ocean is only to surrender to the Supreme Lord. Unfortunately, persons who are engaged in destructive work are unable to surrender to the personality of Godhead. They're all fools of the first order. They're the lowest of the human species of life. They're robbed of their knowledge. Prabhupada is just getting them. Although apparently they seem to be academically educated, they're all of the demoniac mentality, always challenging the supreme power of the Lord. Those who are very materialistic, always hankering after material power and strength, are undoubtedly fools of the first order, because they have no information of the living energy. And being ignorant of the supreme spiritual science, they are absorbed in material science, which ends with the end of the material body. They're the lowest of human beings, because a human life is especially meant for re-establishing the lost relation with the Lord. And they miss this opportunity by being engaged in material activities. They're robbed of their knowledge, because even after prolonged speculation, they cannot reach to the stage of knowing the personality of Godhead, the summum bonum of everything. And all of them are men of demoniac principle, and they suffer the consequences, as did such materialistic heroes as Ravana, Hiranyakashipu, Kamsa, and others. Prabhupada really is going bold in this purport. Even in Ishopanishad, we have these descriptions, how like a miser, when we have this opportunity, when we have this wealth, we are not really using it for the proper purpose, then it's of actually no use, whatever else other activities we are doing, even the so-called welfare work or philanthropy or this, that, all kinds of efforts for peace. As long as we are at the center and not understanding position of Krishna, we cannot surrender. And as long as that is not happening, this irreligion, dharmasya glani will happen, for which Krishna appears and then release the burden of Mother Earth. So that's what I have from this verse. Kindly share your thoughts or comments, any corrections, please. Anything, devotees? Okay,
Hare Krishna Mataji, please accept my humble obeisances. All glory to Srila Prabhupada and Guru Maharaj. Mataji, your discourse was really good, very touching. Particularly coming out of that Bhagavad Gita modules, I could see even the purport as well as your, topics that were relating to each other. And, Prabhupada's words are so strong. Sometimes I feel he is cutting right into my own heart. And, sometimes I look over my shoulders to see if Prabhupada is really looking at me, And you actually brought it out so well. Proprietorship, ownership, and these are the ones you said are where we are pretending to be godlike, So, very, very touching, Mataji. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Prabhu, for sharing that. It's so true. I mean, at times we feel this like kind of heavy, or Prabhupada is coming very strong. But the same point we were discussing about, when we know Krishna is all loving and all good, then we actually take the same situation in a different way. In the same way, when we understand Prabhupada's mood, how he is coming through that, he is actually saying, okay, you fool, you rascal. But it's really coming from that deep, loving platform, so much compassion to really help us. So when we understand that, this is actually, the way you're sharing, he is saying that to us, but really to help us.
Yeah. I really, like we always hear, transcendental, material, spiritual, the difference. If this was really someone else who was talking in that language, I don't know how much I would have taken, So, I mean, Prabhupada is so, so loving and so, compassionate. So, thank you, Mataji.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
One question from Vamshidhari Prabhu. He is pinging me. He is asking why Krishna is still instigating, because Duryodhana is also a good ruler.
Any other devotees wants to share? Prabhu wants to test me. From this purport, we can understand that dharmasya glani, though we may say Duryodhana is a good ruler per se for the people in general, but the kind of mentality what he is carrying through, that is not healthy. And when the rulers are having that kind of mentality, we see how the ruler is, everyone actually follows that same kind of, the attitude or the whole mood. We hear about this Ramarajya, or the kingdom of Yudhishthir Maharaj, Parikshit Maharaj. Beautiful, beautiful descriptions are there, how the whole entire citizens, they are actually following the dharma. So when the ruler is not God conscious, however good he is, I mean, the same topic Prabhupada is going through, the so-called philosophy, I mean, philanthropical work, welfare work, whatever it is, as long as we don't have Krishna in the center, all of it is not going to help us. And of course, the other thing is to bring all the kings, all these impious kings at one place into Kurukshetra and to relieve Mother Earth's burden. That's what my limited understanding, Prabhu. I don't know if Vamshidhari Prabhu is happy with that. If any other devotees have anything to share, kindly share.
Hare Krishna Mataji, please accept my humble obeisances. All glory to Srila Prabhupada. Mataji, I was just contemplating on the point which you are saying about our position. The Supreme Lord is the ultimate proprietor and the enjoyer, and the living entities, our real position is a cooperator. That's what Srila Prabhupada says. So the tendency to lord over the material nature on living entities is coming because the tendency is there on the with the Supreme Lord. So we are inheriting that from the Supreme Lord. So my question is that with the tendency that we have, we are trying to lord it over, and we get into the entanglement of the activities, which is karma, the reactions based on that, through exploiting this. Is that the intentional design for the living entities to get to misuse and experience the dukkale masashvatam, and then so that we totally rectify and we be the real cooperator, Mataji? How do we understand that part?
Yeah, I always wonder, Prabhu, why Krishna has to, put us into this. He says, this is my deluding potency, my external energy, which is actually very difficult to overcome. And it's like, excuse me, Krishna, why you have to put me into this? And then you expect me to understand and then come over it. It's like, it's very bewildering. But as you rightly put, we have that kind of tendency, we have that kind of mentality. But that mentality, as we hear about this, the master and servant, when we keep master in the center and do all those activities, even then we are still enjoying those things. I mean, we are having nice prasadam and beautiful kirtans, dancing, and such an entertainment and fun. We are actually doing everything, but the center is shifted to Krishna. So when we have that thing, uh, the center, it's really not my own enjoyment, but it is enjoying the relationship with Krishna. So when we have that kind of a tendency, then probably, as you mentioned, it's completely reforming. I think that's what the purpose of creation also is mentioned, right? Like to give a chance for these conditioned souls who have this propensity to go there and try to, the quote unquote, lord over the nature and try to experience this flickering material happiness. And also there is the chance to come back. We have these wonderful devotees and Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita, this knowledge. I think that's the two purposes Prabhupada again and again mentions.
Right. If we, Krishna just say without us experiencing, we may not really take it for granted. So that's why he really wanted to perceive with the direct experience of how it is to lord over and to suffer. I think it makes sense, Mataji. Thank you very much, Mataji.
Yeah, and also this other thing coming from nectar of devotion, right? Pure devotional service. It's sudurlabha. It's very difficult, extremely difficult. As I mentioned, if it comes just easy, we don't understand the futilities of this material world, and if it's just coming easy, we may not take it. It's so valuable. We'll just take it for granted, and we want to go back to that again.
Thank you, Mataji. Makes sense. Hare Krishna.
Okay, devotees, this is 3 minutes past. Any last questions or comments, corrections? If not, we will close here. Thank you so much for all of you to join and participate. Have a wonderful day. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Granthra Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhye vacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavibhyo namo. Hare Krishna.